Here's something strange about your own body that you have probably never once stopped to think about. The hair on your head is bizarre, genuinely biologically weird, because unlike the hair almost anywhere else on your body, and unlike the fur of nearly every other animal on Earth, the hair on your head doesn't seem to know when to stop. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. Left completely alone for years, the hair on a human head can grow down past the shoulders, past the waist, in some cases all the way to the floor. Now compare that to the hair on your arms or your eyebrows. That hair grows to a certain short length and then simply stops, holds there, and falls out to be replaced. That's how hair works for most mammals too. Their fur grows to a set length suited to their body and stays there. But the hair on the human head is different. It grows for years before it sheds, reaching lengths that serve no obvious survival purpose, and which would have created a very real, very practical problem for our ancestors. Now, you might wonder why on earth we evolved hair like this in the first place. If long head hair is such a hassle, why did our bodies make it? And there's a fascinating leading idea. Our ancestors evolved in the intense heat and blazing sun of equatorial Africa, walking upright under a sun that beat straight down on the tops of their heads. A thick cap of hair on the scalp, right where the sun hit hardest, may have been excellent protection, shielding the head and the precious heat-sensitive brain beneath it from solar radiation and overheating, while the rest of the body went relatively bare to sweat and stay cool. In other words, the hair on your head may be a built-in sun hat, evolved to guard your brain from the African sun. That's a beautiful solution. But it came with an accidental side effect. Once you have hair that grows long and keeps growing, you have created, for the first time in the animal kingdom, the problem of what to do with all of it. The sun hat that protected our ancestors' brains was also the tangle that trapped their lice. Evolution gave us the hair. It was up to us to figure out how to live with it. Because think about it, if your hair just keeps growing, and you live in a wild, rough, dangerous world, and you do absolutely nothing about it, then over the years that hair becomes a heavy, matted, tangled mess. A liability. And no other creature has to deal with this. So at some point, our ancestors had to do something. No animal had ever needed to do before. They had to start managing, and eventually cutting, their own hair. So when did that happen? When did the first human take a sharp edge to their hair, and why did they bother? And here's the thing, nobody tells you. The answer isn't just about tidiness or hygiene. The story of why we cut our hair turns out to be a story about survival, about parasites, and ultimately about one of the very first ways humans ever learned to send a message to each other without saying a single word. So let's start with the problem itself, because it's bigger than you might think. Imagine never cutting your hair, ever, and living not in a clean modern home, but out in the wild. Within a few years, you'd have a thick, long, dense mass of hair. And out there, that's not just inconvenient, it's genuinely dangerous. Long, loose hair snags on branches and thorns as you move through brush. It falls into your eyes at the exact wrong moment, when you need to see a threat or make a precise movement. It can get caught in your tools, your weapons, your work. In a fight or a fall or a hunt, a long mane of hair is something for the world to grab onto. And then there's the heat. A massive, matted helmet of hair. Traps warmth against the scalp, which in a hot climate is the last thing you want. And worst of all, there are the passengers. A thick, unwashed, uncut tangle of hair is a perfect home for parasites. Lice and the nits they lay thrive in dense human hair, and they spread disease and cause relentless, maddening discomfort. For most of human history, parasites in the hair were not a rare problem. They were a constant, universal battle, and the longer and more matted the hair, the worse that battle became. So our ancestors had every practical reason in the world to manage their hair. To keep it shorter, cleaner, and under control. The question is how they did it, before anything we'd recognize, as a pair of scissors existed. And the answer is that the first haircuts were probably pretty rough. Long before fine blades, humans had several ways to deal with unruly hair. They could singe it, burning the ends back with fire. They could tear or break it. They could grind and abrade it shorter against rough stone. None of it was elegant, but all of it worked to keep the hair from growing into an unmanageable mass. But the real revolution came with sharp tools. Our ancestors were, for a very long time, masters of working stone into astonishingly sharp edges. They made blades and flakes from flint and obsidian, volcanic glass that can be chipped to an edge sharper than modern surgical steel. And a sharp stone flake is perfectly capable of slicing through hair. So the moment humans had access to these keen cutting edges, which was a very, very long time ago, they had everything they needed to deliberately cut their hair. We can't pin down the exact date of the first intentional haircut, because hair itself rots away, and a stone blade doesn't come labeled with what it cut. But the capability is ancient, reaching back deep into the Stone Age. Whenever a human first looked at their own overgrown hair, picked up a sharp flake, and deliberately cut it shorter, that was the first haircut. And it was almost certainly tens of thousands of years ago, if not far older. And it's worth appreciating just how sharp those tools really were. A freshly struck flake of obsidian can have an edge just a few molecules thick, finer than the finest steel razor we can manufacture today. Our ancestors were not hacking at their hair with crude clubs. They had access to some of the sharpest cutting edges that have ever existed, and they were extraordinarily skilled at making them. Cutting hair cleanly was well within their power. Much later, in the Bronze Age, people made razors out of metal, though by many accounts the early ones were a rather unpleasant tool to use, and dulled quickly. In some ways, a fresh obsidian flake may have given a closer, kinder shave than the first metal blades that eventually replaced it. And they didn't just cut it, they combed it. The comb is one of the oldest tools humans have, found across many ancient cultures, made of bone, wood, ivory, and other materials. And a comb isn't just for looks. One of its most important original jobs was almost certainly to drag out the tangles, and, crucially, to comb out the lice and their eggs. The humble comb was a weapon in that endless war against the parasites in our hair. So the basic toolkit of hair care, the cutting edge and the comb, is genuinely ancient, born out of the practical necessity of managing this strange, ever-growing stuff on top of our heads. And here's a lovely thing about that war against the parasites. Fighting it was almost certainly a deeply social act. You cannot easily comb the lice out of your own hair, not properly, not the back of your own head. You need someone else to do it for you. And so, just as we see in our primate relatives, who spend hours grooming each other and picking through each other's fur, our ancestors almost certainly groomed one another. They sat together, combing and cleaning and tending each other's hair, removing the parasites, working out the tangles. And that act of grooming is about far more than hygiene. To let someone tend your hair is to let them get close, to trust them, to relax into their care. Among our primate cousins, grooming is one of the main glues of social bonding, a way of building and maintaining relationships. So when our ancestors cared for each other's hair, they weren't just removing lice. They were building trust, strengthening bonds, saying through their hands, "I am here, I will take care of you." The simple act of doing each other's hair may be one of the oldest forms of human tenderness there is. And if you've ever felt that quiet, soothing comfort of having someone gently play with or brush your hair, you are feeling something ancient, the echo of countless generations who cared for one another exactly this way. So here's the question that should be sitting in the back of your mind. If our ancestors were cutting and combing their hair, primarily to deal with tangles and lice and practicality, when did it become something more? When did the haircut stop being just maintenance and start being a statement? And this is where the whole story flips and gets genuinely fascinating, because here's the truth. Hair is one of the most powerful social signals the human body has, and our ancestors figured this out a very, very long time ago. Think about what makes hair so perfect for sending a message. It's highly visible, right up there framing the face. The first thing you notice about a person. It can be changed, cut, grown, styled, colored, arranged in endless ways. And those changes can be read instantly by anyone who shares the cultural code. Hair is a billboard, mounted on the most attention-grabbing part of your body. And humans, being the intensely social creatures we are, could not resist turning that billboard into a language. We have stunning evidence that this happened deep in prehistory. Consider the famous ancient carvings, sometimes called Venus figurines, small sculptures of human figures made tens of thousands of years ago, during the Ice Age. Some of the most famous of these don't have plain or random hair. They appear to show deliberate, intricate, carefully arranged hairstyles. Rows of braids or curls wrapped meticulously around the head. Now, scholars debate exactly what these represent, whether it's elaborately braided hair or some kind of woven cap or headdress. But either way, the message is the same, and it's profound. More than 20,000 years ago, humans were not just letting their hair grow wild. They were styling it, arranging it with care and intention and real skill in ways that clearly mattered to them. The deliberate hairstyle is at least as old as Ice Age art. So what were all these styles actually saying? What messages did hair carry? And the answer is an incredible range of them, touching nearly every important part of human social life. Hair could signal your status. Throughout history, elaborate, well-tended, intricately styled hair often marked the powerful and the wealthy, the people with the time, the resources, and the helpers to maintain it. A complicated hairstyle said, "I have the luxury to spend hours on this, and people to help me." In ancient Egypt, for example, hairstyles were carefully governed by social and political position, with elaborate styles and even wigs signaling rank and importance. Hair could signal your group, your tribe, your people. A particular style, a specific way of cutting or braiding or arranging the hair, could instantly identify which community you belong to, marking insiders from outsiders at a glance. Your hair announced your tribe before you said a word. Hair could signal your stage of life. In many cultures, children wore their hair one way, and the transition to adulthood was marked by a dramatic change in hairstyle. In ancient Egypt, for instance, children often wore a distinctive side lock of hair, while the rest of the head was shaved, a clear visual marker of childhood that was removed as they grew up. The haircut became a rite of passage, a way of wearing your very age and status for all to see. Hair could signal gender. In a great many cultures, the length and style of hair became one of the primary ways of distinguishing men from women or of marking the boundaries. A society drew around masculinity and femininity. Which way you wore your hair could place you instantly on one side or the other of one of the most fundamental divisions a culture recognized, and breaking those hair conventions has been, throughout history, one of the most visible ways a person could defy expectations. Hair could signal whether you were available or spoken for, with different styles marking the unmarried from the married in countless societies. It could signal your role, your profession, your devotion, with certain groups, like some religious orders much later in history, adopting specific haircuts as a mark of their identity and commitment. And here's the darker side of the same power, and it's one we've touched on before in these stories. Because if a particular hairstyle was a source of pride and identity, then forcibly removing it became a profound act of domination and humiliation. Throughout history, shaving the head was used as a punishment, a mark of shame, a way of stripping someone of their identity and status. When people were enslaved or imprisoned or conquered, having their hair forcibly cut off was a deliberate way of erasing who they were and asserting power over them. We saw this same logic with names and with tattoos. The way a marker of identity can be weaponized turned from a source of pride into a tool of control. Hair was no different. To control someone's hair was to control a piece of their very self, and hair could carry grief. In many cultures, people would cut their hair or tear it or shave their heads as an expression of mourning when someone they loved died. The dramatic alteration of the hair became a visible sign of inner devastation, a way of wearing loss on the body for the whole community to witness. Even in sorrow, the hair spoke. So look at what's happened here. We started with a simple, practical problem. Hair that wouldn't stop growing, that tangled and trapped parasites and got in the way. And in solving that problem, our ancestors stumbled onto something far bigger. They realized that this stuff on their heads, which they had to manage anyway, could be shaped to mean something. And so the haircut became one of humanity's very first languages, a way to broadcast your status, your tribe, your age, your availability, your beliefs, your grief, and your identity, all without speaking a single word. Long before writing, before perhaps even complex language as we know it, humans were already reading each other's hair. Now, I have to be honest with you, the way this channel always tries to be. The exact timeline here is genuinely fuzzy, and we should be upfront about that. Because hair decays and stone tools don't come with instructions, we cannot point to a specific moment and say, there, that is the first haircut. Or there, that is the first time hair was styled to mean something. We're reading clues, the strange biology of our hair, the sharpness of ancient tools, the hairstyles frozen in Ice Age art, the customs of more recent peoples, and reasoning backward. The broad story is clear and well supported. The precise dates are lost to us, dissolved along with all that ancient hair. We know it happened deep in our past. We just can't time it to the year. But the deep truth of it is solid, and I find it genuinely beautiful, because the haircut sits right at the intersection of the two great forces that shaped us. On one side, raw practicality, the need to survive, to stay clean, to fight off the parasites, to keep the hair out of our eyes and out of harm's way. And on the other side, the deeply human need for meaning, for identity, for belonging, for self-expression. The haircut is where survival and meaning meet. It began as a tool for staying alive, and became a tool for saying who we are. And we are still doing it, right now, in exactly the same way. Think about it. When you choose a hairstyle, you are making a statement, whether you mean to or not, about your taste, your group, your self-image, your mood, the person you want to be seen as. A teenager dyes their hair to declare independence. A new haircut marks a fresh start after heartbreak. We read enormous amounts of information into each other's hair, status, age, subculture, personality, all in a single glance, exactly as our ancestors did tens of thousands of years ago. The styles have changed beyond recognition. The deep impulse has not changed at all. We are still wearing our identities on our heads. So let's bring this whole story together. When did ancient humans start cutting their hair? Almost certainly deep in the Stone Age. As soon as they had sharp tools and the practical wisdom that this strange, endlessly growing hair needed to be managed to fight off the tangles and the parasites and the dangers of a wild mane. But why they cut it became, over time, a far richer question. Because they discovered that hair could be shaped into meaning, and they turned it into one of the oldest visual languages our species ever invented. A language of status and tribe and age and grief and identity, written on the most visible part of the body, and read instantly by everyone who shared the code. So here's my last question for you. The next time you sit down for a haircut, or run your fingers through your hair, or decide to grow it out or shave it off, remember that you are taking part in one of the oldest human rituals there is, a practice that began with our ancestors fighting a practical battle against their own strange biology, and became a profound act of self-expression, stretching back through tens of thousands of years. So what is your hair saying about you right now? And whatever it's saying, did you choose it on purpose? Or is your hair speaking a language so ancient and so automatic that you never even realized you'd been fluent in it your whole life? Let me know what you think in the comments. I genuinely want to hear it. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll see you soon.